in the topic that we're looking at today, and trusting in the Lord. What a joy to be here with you today. We have been looking forward to this for some time. In fact, Pastor Errol is not happy because I didn't go to see him in Bacolod. I said, no, I will go and see Harris and Rhea. We've been longing to do this for some time. Some of you have asked if this is the first time we've ever been to the Philippines. It has not. In fact, in the seminar today, I may share the story. The first time we visited was 1985. That's where we met. So the Philippines always has a special place. She was in Cebu. I was in Davao City. Long time ago. That was 40 years ago. Many different times have passed since. But that was the beginning of really our relationship. So we love Filipino food. And we always have great fellowship with people that we've come to know, especially our dear friends, Batayans. But in our relationship, we have agreed on one thing, and that is she does the cooking and I do the cleaning. Doesn't mean she doesn't know how to clean. She's very good at cleaning. What it means is that I don't know how to cook very well. So in order for us to eat well, healthy, she does the cooking and I do the cleaning. And when Jackie is doing the cooking, she will often have many different pots on the oven, different things happening at the same time. It's not just one pot. It may be another. One in a skillet over here, one in a pot over there, one cooking over there. Number of different things that are going on simultaneously. And if I come down and say, I'm hungry, I want to eat now, she will say, wait. I have to get everything perfectly mixed together, and when it's time for dinner, then we will eat. Well, but I'm hungry now. Well, you'll just have to wait, because I want to serve this meal when it's at its best. When I'm cooking it and I know what's best, then we'll serve it, and then you'll see you shouldn't have eaten it beforehand. Eat it when it's done. Everything is spiced just right. Everything is perfectly in its proper time. Well, sometimes we can be like that with God, right? Which we would say, but I want answers now. I want to have answers, or I want to know the reason why I'm hungry for something. I'm hungry for direction. I'm hungry for a reason why I'm in this struggle. And God may say, hang on, wait, I'm cooking up something. You're just going to have to wait until the time is right. And then my perfect purpose will be seen, and you wouldn't have wanted it any other time. I want us to look at how God is changing the world and changing people. I've made the title, 5 Ways God Changes Lives. I want you to see this in Genesis chapter 41 this morning. So whether you have a hard copy of the Bible or whether digital on your phone, however, or your tablet, I want you to look over to Genesis 41. We're going to cover most of this chapter in the brief time that we have. And I want us to see some important things that the Lord is doing. And it's not just in the life of Joseph, but he certainly is a featured person. When you get to Old Testament stories, sometimes you know a story because you've heard it maybe most of your life. You've heard it in church. And it's very easy just to brush over that, think we're familiar with the story, without stopping, going through the select ingredients, dissecting it a little bit more, and then seeing how the storyteller, which is Moses, who wrote all this, puts it together so that we'll understand what we need to understand, not only about the characters that are involved, but about God. And God working in human life with a young man who is an expat. He's in a country, he's in a place that he wasn't born in. No families around, it's just him and God. What's going to happen? Maybe you can relate. I know we could when we moved to Singapore. Beautiful country, but it wasn't our home. And yet, in that place, God was still there. Here's the first thing you need to know. When God changes life, he prepares his witness. He prepares his witness. Click that on that next one. There you go. Look at the first sentence of verse 1. It says, after 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed he was standing by the Nile. Look at that first part. You almost pass over it too quickly. After 2 whole years. 2 whole years for what? Well, back up. Go into chapter 40. And there you have Joseph has been interpreting the dreams of two of the officials of Pharaoh's court, the cupbearer and the baker. There was apparently discovered there was some sort of conspiracy, something that was going to be carried out to assassinate maybe Pharaoh, whatever it was, whatever plot was discovered. Both of them were thrown into prison under suspicion. And during the night, they had a dream. Joseph interprets it for them. And as he interprets it, both of them come true. One is restored to their place, that's the cupbearer. One is executed, that was the baker. And Joseph says, I want you to remember me when you are going. But it says in verse 23, yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. After 2 whole years, the next thing happens. Forgotten for 2 years in prison. And then we have to back up and say, what's going on here? You have a young man who's been obedient to his father to take over really the family business. He has the jealousy of his brother. And because he's being obedient to that, maybe at times a little brash, but nonetheless faithful, he is trafficked by his own family. Worse than executed, he's sold into slavery where no one will know him. No one will know whatever happened to him. He is in a foreign land, speaks a different language where they don't even worship the true God. He's all by himself, and he's a teenager. The text indicates earlier he was 17 when this happened, when he's separated from the land he loves and the people that he knows. And so he's faithful to God there in captivity, even with no father, no one around. He still has been trained enough to follow after God, and he's serving in Potiphar's household. And for staying pure in the midst of temptation of the boss's wife, what happens to him? He's unjustly accused and thrown into prison. Now in prison, he's faithful to the Lord, who gives him ability to interpret dreams. We know he can have dreams, but now he's interpreting others' dreams. And for faithfulness here, he's forgotten. Trafficked, falsely accused, forgotten. The total time of years is 13 years this is all happening. When we pick up our story here, he's 30. His whole 20s have been spent in injustice, neglect, prison, false accusations. 20s is some of the most productive times of your life. For him, that's it. Never having any freedom. Ever felt like that? God's forgetting you? Maybe it seems like that. You follow the Lord faithfully, and it gets worse and worse and worse. Is God doing anything? He is. And the first thing he's doing, he's going to work on you. He's going to work on his messenger. There's things that are going to happen, but Joseph doesn't know that. Every time he follows the Lord, the situation gets worse. Psalm 27:14. And click those verses on. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Isaiah 40, verse 31. They who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Familiar verse. But note the point, the ones that wait upon God. One of the hardest things we can do is to put up with circumstances we don't understand that God has allowed us to go into by his sovereignty, and he's doing a work, preparing us, cooking up something. The time isn't right when it's going to be explained. Joseph is going to have something he's going to have to be prepared for. He doesn't know it yet, but the responsibility is so weighty, the opportunity is so incredible, the outcome so amazing. He has to be ready for it. And this is the only way he's going to get ready. Suffer injustice so you can give justice. Be deprived so you can supply. Have no compassion shown on you so you can show compassion on others. And when his brothers finally do arrive and he's in his position, what does he say? You meant something evil for me, but God meant something good. The pain is real because he's going to name his two sons after the pain he experienced. Ephraim and Manasseh has to do with the pain. He never forgot it. It wasn't that he didn't feel it. He felt it. He never unfelt that. The scars were there for life. Even after reconciliation with his father, he was greatly encouraged. But for a young man, he was not without having that damage him. How about you? Maybe God is preparing something, and you don't know what, and we're not saying it's going to be the same here, but he is allowing you to go into a period of injustice. Maybe you've been falsely accused. Maybe you feel you've been forgotten by God, overlooked by other people. Wait upon him. He's preparing you his messenger. And there's going to come a time when you're going to give a message. Let's follow the story. Not only does God prepare his witness, but second of all, he prepares his audience. Now we pick up in the rest of chapter 41. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep, and he dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning, his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to the Pharaoh. You notice how I emphasize the word behold. It's mentioned repeatedly here. It's an indication of the startling nightmare the guy was having, as if he's in his dream, and behold, and something's bad, and you're tossing and turning and sweating and waking up, and you fall asleep, and it happens again. When he went to bed, he was the ruler of the world. When he woke up, he was troubled in spirit. How do you get across to someone who has everything, has power, has position, has wealth? You go in the middle of their dreams in the night and you disturb them. Now they're ready to listen to anybody. God can bring about change even in the hardest of heart. And by the way, Pharaoh in Egypt was regarded as deity. He was the conduit. I mean, that was part of the purpose of the pyramids, is to be a conduit from the spiritual realm of the gods speaking to humans on earth. And he had to have a message so that he could rule the people properly. And if he doesn't understand the message and he doesn't know what's happening, now he's going to have a problem. How can he be a god to these people? How can he guide them? If the other gods are talking to him and he's got some vision, some dream, and dreams were supposed to be the communication, the revelation from deities. You had people in the courts who specialized in this art. They had the way in which they could have an index, and this meant this, and this meant that. But they could not figure this out. I don't know what that means. Now you're really having a problem. God has a messenger, and he's got to prepare his audience. That may take some time. It's not just about the messenger. It's also about the audience. And the timing, like cooking, has to be just right. So for a fellow who went to bed and he's not going to listen to anybody, the only ones he's going to listen to are the heavens. And when that gets invaded in his bedroom, he is defenseless. And his advisors can't tell him, and he is troubled. Open to change, open to listen, even to someone from another ethnicity and a lower social plane. How do you bring that about? How do you humble a person who is powerful and proud? God can do it. God can wake a person up Jackie and I have met people throughout the years who the Lord has alerted them to their mortality, their limited time here on life. Sometimes it could have been some incident that happened. Sometimes even in some nightmare that they had. Not all nightmares work the same way, but sometimes they do. They wake a person up. God uses all kinds of circumstances. And so the Lord is working. It says, well, that's 13 years. Why couldn't he have done it in 5? Leave that to God. He's the cook. He's the sovereign Lord. We've been singing about trusting in his way. And if you are allowed to stew a bit on God's oven and you're wondering why, wait for him. Because he's not idle. He's not cruel. He is doing multiple things, putting it all together so that it's unmistakably God. It's not coincidence. It's not human designed or manipulated. It's divinely, sovereignly guided, because that's where the Lord has been moving it all along. From Joseph's being trafficked by his brothers to Pharaoh's being ready to hear. And by the way, later on, you're not going to have that same kind of reception when Moses tries to talk to the same title of a Pharaoh. So God is working. He's working on you as a messenger. He's working on someone else as an audience. And chances are, because Potiphar was the captain of the guard, and when he was putting Joseph into prison and the officials were in the palace, he may have been literally right underneath Pharaoh's throne. The dungeons were down below. Pharaoh was in the palace up high. And how are you going to get the guy in the basement up to the throne room? Where's the bridge? Well, that's your third change. God is going to prepare a bridge. Pick up in verse 9. This whole thing seems to be remarkably sensible. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, we dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office. The baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I've had a dream. There's no one who can interpret it. I've heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Stop right there. Okay. Now we're following the story, and even the storyteller is showing us, here's Joseph, here's Pharaoh, we got to bring them together. Then the cupbearer says, oh, that's right, dream, interpretation. Pharaoh, I had this happen. There was, and he doesn't even call him by name. He just refers to him by his ethnicity, his racial identity. There was Hebrew guy. That's all he's known as. No name, just you're the Hebrew guy. And he's a servant. Why would a servant be allowed to even talk, especially someone who's not of the same race, allowed to talk to an Egyptian? It's going to call for some humility. But if the audience is disturbed enough and prepared enough, they'll listen to anyone. Even someone who's not on their social scale, not someone who's on their status level, even as they think of themselves racially. Incredible. And the cupbearer says, I forgot about him. 2 years, and now he remembers him. Why? Because the time is right. This is God's sovereignty over the whole thing. We got to bring them together. Joseph is quickly shaved. Can't have beards. It was considered dirty. Clean, new clothes. You have to be spotless coming before the Pharaoh. And he comes before him. And it's his moment. He woke up, went to bed maybe that night. Nothing's changed. God's not doing anything. Wakes up, and now all of a sudden he's hauled in front of the Pharaoh.
He doesn't know what's going on. God's about to transform his life, but he doesn't know when he stands before the Pharaoh whether it's going to get better or get worse. And what else could happen except he can be executed on the spot, especially when we find out what he has to say. If he says it. But the moment is set. The suspense is there. You picture this dramatically, and you find out here's this young man who has been mistreated, mishandled. He's holding on to God, and God seems to not come through. It gets worse, and now all of a sudden, the spotlight in the biggest time of his life. He's brought before the Pharaoh. I've heard that you can interpret dreams. No one else can do this. See what you do. Mind you, either he interprets it or he's dead. I mean, you're not going to just listen to some guy. He's not going to make something up. The pressure's on. And by the way, when God brings you in connection with someone else, what will you say? Let's find out what Joseph has to say. God prepares a witness. He prepares his audience. He prepares a bridge. And now he's going to prepare a message. This is what it's come down to. God is going to speak and change the world. And in doing that, he had to prepare everybody, all the components, to get them all together. Cupbearer's there, Pharaoh's there, Joseph's there. What will he say? I'm going to read this, and I'm going to read it dramatically because you need to see it dramatically. I'm into cinema anyway, so I wanted to see this in that narrative drama. Pick up in verse 16. Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It's not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Well, behold, in my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile, fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor, very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magician, but there was no one who could explain it to me." Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty years, blighted by the east wind, are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine." Wow. What an answer. This was not, well, I think this will happen. No. God has said what he is going to do. He keeps repeating that. When you have the repetition, especially in Hebrew narrative, it's going to be an emphasis. God is going to show what he is doing. God is going to show. God, not you. God is going to show. It's like, whoa, okay. Joseph, you're making your point. There's a God and it's not Pharaoh. You don't have control. He has control. He has shown you by his grace what he's going to do, but it's going to happen. God real God, has shown what he, mind you, the God who has not rescued me until now, so for 13 years, the God who seems to not have done anything is now going to do something. That's faith, and it's coming from a young man. Never underestimate your age in believing and following God. Don't wait till later. Do it now. Joseph is an incredible model that will be matched by Daniel, a similar situation years later, interpreting dreams in the power of the world. Joseph is kind of the precursor of that. And basically, he's coming out with, here's the revelation of God. It means this, specifically this. This is what you need to do. Do this, and do it now. Now, there you have an expository sermon. The power of exposing God's truth and bringing that out and being very specific and clarifying it. And directive. He doesn't make suggestions. He gives commands. He doesn't back off from the hard stuff. He tells them who's God and who's not. He had to be prepared 13 years to get that message ready for it. He had nothing to lose. He might lose his life, but you know what? 13 years, he hasn't seen his dad. He either trusts God or he doesn't. Listen, my friends, you either trust God with a message that God has without compromise, without apology. You can be gentle with it, but you must be clear on it. When God speaks, it will always be something that will direct and confront pride and will always have directive for what you need to do next. It's a message of change. And Joseph doesn't miss his moment. He doesn't miss his moment. And you would think a guy like that would stand up and say, God, yeah, he didn't seem to do much for me. I don't know, Pharaoh, you'll have to figure this out. No, that's not his message. But sometimes that can be ours. We complain about what God hasn't done, but here he is alive, standing before Pharaoh. He's preserved him. And by the way, for those who are like us, a little bit older, and you're pouring your life into younger lives, don't underestimate what God can do even through your witness to them. Jacob has no idea the impact of the teaching which he has raised Joseph on. He's not like his brothers, which seem to have no ethical basis for what they do. They're fighting with each other all the time. But Joseph, it sinks in, and he remembers that, and he has to, because that's the only way he's going to make sense of his situation. That's the only way he's going to survive. He trusts in God, even if God apparently to him at that moment does not seem to be doing anything. God is doing a lot, and he has to trust and wait upon God for the proper timing. So that when the Pharaoh is ready, and when this cupbearer is ready, and God allows him to stew so that he'll be ready, so that when the elevation comes suddenly and things change fast, he'll have a character and a spirit that's ready to handle it. Maybe God is putting you on not a dungeon, but a waiting room. You haven't resolved maybe some things that people have tried to do to you. Maybe there's some things that are unfair. Maybe you're just uncertain where God is. Wait for him. Stand strong in him. Stand courage. Because maybe when some things will be resolved, you haven't got time to think. It's just suddenly things are happening fast. I found this to be true throughout our lives, that sometimes things take a while to build, and all of a sudden, whoa, it's going too fast. During the slow times, prepare yourself so that you'll respond in the way that God has designed and wants you to respond. Highs and lows. Well, you've got it all together. You have God preparing his messenger. You have God preparing his audience. You have God preparing the bridge to bring them together. And then you have God preparing this message. Well, what's the response? I mean, all of that could be for naught. He could reject it, chop off his head, and that's the end of that. Well, God prepares a response. Look at verse 37. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there's none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I've set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck, and made him ride in his second chariot. And they called out before him, "Bow the knee." Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanath-Paneah, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Wow. Quite a message and quite a response. I would say over the top. He gives him pretty much full reign of the whole economy. All of these things. He believes it. I mean, you can have this, if someone's saying, "Hey, 7 years, wow, great. We've been having great crops and economic upturns for years. 7 more years." But then when you warn him to say, "No, there's going to be 7 years of which is unprecedented." How do you know that? Well, the dream made him alarmed enough that he would believe the interpretation. No one else could give the interpretation, and no one would dare to say something like that. So he thought, well, this guy's got a lot of courage, that's for certain. And he believes it. God opens up his heart to receive that message, which, of course, when Moses comes, will not be received, even though there's repeated judgments raining down on that Pharaoh. The hardness of heart is a contrast to the openness and kindness of heart here. And God grants that. Not everyone gets that, but Joseph does. So that when he gives the message, it has to be authoritative. It has to be clear, specifically what God wants him to say, so that all of it will be received. And then he has been prepared to implement it. If you were given a promotion, could you handle it? If you were given the income raise or maybe the justice you desire, could you handle it? You might think you can, but God may wants to prepare you so that given more authority, given more responsibility, with hardship in life, you've been softened in humility to be able to handle that. The goodness of God is always coming, even in preparation and helping us wait without clarification, without reason. We're waiting upon him, and rather than growing angry and embittered and complaining, we trust, we're strong, we're humbled, we wait, and then when God clears some things up, and when he suddenly gives us maybe an opportunity to speak to someone, we are a prepared witness. We know what it's like to suffer when someone comes along and suffers. We know what it's like to be alone if someone is feeling alone. We know what it's like to have to wait for God. We've done that, and we can prove that he is true. So you wait for him too. And if he gives us responsibility, it won't go to our head. We'll credit God because we were in the dungeon and we credited God. Now when we're in the lofty heights, we'll also credit God. The habits have already been forged. He's ready to assume leadership. So that when there is the famine and nations do come to him, he can justly distribute things and be impervious to bribes. God is always doing something. He's always cooking up something. And by the way, this doesn't mean guarantee that in injustice, God's going to give you a high government position and give you a wife. You think, oh, Joseph got a wife, so I get one too. Well, hang on. There's not a promise here of that. What it does indicate is that God is working. He cares and sees your situation. He's changing lives, multiple lives. And by the way, this is not just merely about Joseph and Pharaoh. If you go back to Genesis chapter 15, God made a promise to Abraham. And he told him then, I'm going to send away your descendants, which you have none right now, but when you have a child and only descendants, I'm going to send them away for hundreds of years into Egypt. And then I will bring them back with a mighty hand. And they'll come back and worship me in this land. You see, Joseph was just a small part of a larger plan of God. He didn't know that. He may have heard about the promise, but he didn't have any idea that beyond his life there's going to be captivity for all the descendants. Maybe he wouldn't have brought them to Egypt to begin with if he knew that. But God had a plan all along, and Joseph was a part of that, so that the nation could formulate, so that when Moses would come and deliver them, they would have unity, they would have the law, they'd meet at Mount Sinai. All of that was part of the larger plan that he is continuously working towards. Joseph was that small part. You may be part of something larger that God is doing, and you're going to have to trust him because he may never reveal that to you. This is the sovereignty of God. This is the trust in God. It's like, well, I'm just little old me over in a corner. Yeah, but God may use this to touch a person, and a message that you give could change their life, and then they'll be part of a change, and they'll be part of something larger that he has already been working on. And there's multiple things. That's the choreography of God, is that he's keeping a lot of things happening on the stage of life, and they all work in synchronicity and bring it together for his glory so that no one can say, oh, I made this happen. No, God orchestrates life. Even when he allows sin that seems to reign, it's only for a period of time so that we will trust in him and be his representatives. When our moment comes, when our lives may seem to be forgotten, they're not. They're being prepared. My prayer for you today is that in whatever connections, tie-ins, circumstances you are in, that you'll trust that as God was working in this young expat youth's life, and he never went back to his original home, by the way, until his bones were brought there. He had to learn another language. He had to dress a different way. He became a complete multicultural person. By the way, God did that with Esther. He did that with Daniel. He did that with a lot of people. He moves people around. He has his people in the right place at the right time so that when he brings others that intersect with them, the message comes across. They just have to be prepared in their heart for God and in the message of truth. Where they have been trained for that and prepared for that, then leave it to God to bridge it together with others. Let's pray. Gracious God, we come before you trusting in you. We don't want to just merely sing about it, but the songs come back to comfort us and reaffirm us that you are working in your sovereign will. You don't forget us. You tell us in Hebrews you never will forsake us. Therefore, we can be content. We can be content even in trying circumstances. And years may go by, but you still are at work. Thank you for the reassurance of that, even in a familiar story, which we want to see it from the realistic eyes of human experience. And I pray for my brothers and sisters that they will continually trust in you, even as they walk, sometimes in clarity, sometimes uncertainty, but always truthfully guided and believing and holding on to what you revealed about yourself. For you are a great, a good, and a mighty God. In Jesus' name, amen.